this is one of the things that is very critical. Very often, I work with many universities and colleges across the region. And one of the things that I always hear is the level of the student is not good. They don't have the language. They're used to spoon feeding. They don't want to learn, blah, blah, blah. I do understand that there are some challenges with things. But our role as educators, help these students to raise their level, as opposed as coming and saying, we're going to do it this way because anyways, if I make the exam and I try to do something unusual and I change the assessment strategy, my students are not going to engage, they're not going to understand, they're not going to get good grades. Because if I lower the standard and you lower the standard and he lowers the standard and she lowers the standard, then we're going to be producing graduates that are going to be going to the workplace and are going to represent the name of our institutions and colleges and departments, and they're not going to be ready for the job. And this is why I always say that if you're in education and if you're teaching, it's the one profession that is not a job, it's a passion. And we should actually be able to work in a passionate manner to try to help students. It's not going to be easy the first time. Rome wasn't built overnight. When you try to implement a lot of these active learning strategies, taking the students out of their comfort zone, asking them to present and defend and put an argument and all, they're probably sometimes not used to these things. And it's not going to work well, probably 100% the first time. But it is only by doing it and redoing it and making it a habit and a culture that actually student mindset will be changing. So that is why student centricity has become an important thing. Now, to summarize everything that you say, student centricity is an approach where we prioritize the abilities of the students, their needs, their interests, so that the students' needs determine the course content, the kind of activities, the material, and the pace of learning. So it means that we look at the student. If I am planning to do learning activities it's the same course with the same learning outcome, but I'm teaching 2 sessions. One of these sessions, most of my students are working students. You know, they have careers, they have experience, they have families, they don't have much time. And I have another session, the same course, but they're all young students with no. So the way I will be teaching, the activities I will design for this group will have to be completely different from the other group. And this is what student centricity is about. The unfortunate thing is that it is a statement that we often put in our mission statements at program levels, at departments, at colleges, at university level, but then we don't do anything about it. We just forget about it. It's nice, it looks fancy, you know, we're a student-centric environment, we're a student-centric teaching institution, but then we don't do something with it. Now, one way of actually promoting student centricity, yes please.
Before moving on,
yes.
Actually the faculty award scheme here
yes.
At the King Faisal University is usually done in return of research, not in return of teaching.
Yes.
Where is the champ of the year? Where is the award in return of teaching?
Let me tell you something.
This will reinforce the teaching practices.
I do completely agree with you. And this is not very specific to King Faisal University. Unfortunately, in most of the universities in our part of the world, teaching and learning is not an institutional matter. It doesn't get the institutional attention. If you go to the West, you go to universities, top universities in Australia, in the States, in the UK, you find in the organizational structure a position called a vice chancellor or a pro-vice chancellor for learning and teaching. It's a senior position. And the role of these people is to put a teaching and learning strategy, a framework, the policies, the standards, and then for the support also. So they look at professional development, they go look at recognition schemes, they look at awards, they look at mentoring and coaching new professors, and they look at all of these things. So when you're talking about, I will completely agree with, it is not specific to your institution. In fact, even if you look at the ranking systems of universities, most of the ranking, although Times of Higher Education in 2013 changed their criteria to include the component on teaching, most of the ranking are based on research. So you could be an excellent teaching institution, a technical college, with excellent teaching, but you will still be ranked on the basis of your publications, your citations, your patent, how many of your alumni won Nobel Prizes, and so forth. It's the mindset that we need to change. I was very impressed to see that the Times of Higher Education have launched recently a ranking for European universities on teaching specifically. And I think that's the culture. But I always say the glass is half full. We can see the half that is empty, or we can choose to see the half that is full and see how we can fill it. I would say that in a way your institution has taken a first step by doing this professional development week. And then hopefully it will have future ones and other ones, and it would look at recognition schemes and at excellence awards and at so many other things. So, but I do agree with you, sir, that this is an issue that you face not very specifically here, but across most of our Arab countries. Teaching and learning, the smallest budget is for the teaching and learning. When you appoint, you accept a teaching and learning center, they appoint a junior person who cannot even talk with the professors and the faculty. It is a common phenomenon that you find here. It's not like, so hopefully the mindset would be changing, in the near future. Now, one of the ways to promote student centricity is to try to look at how to engage students. Student engagement and motivation are crucial to enabling student-centric instruction. And some people will say this concept of active learning, if you go and look at the research that is done in the area of teaching and learning, you'll see that so much has been written in the last decade, one decade, about active learning, competency-based learning, project-based learning, case-based learning, about active learning, about all of these things. Now somebody's going to come and say, these things have always been important. Why are they a big thing now? Why is it that everybody's obsessed with this whole thing of active learning and student engagement? We've always been teaching. We've always been doing projects with students. There are reasons why it has actually become such an important topic. And although it is not a new one of the first thinkers about what is called today active learning was John Dewey. John Dewey was an American educator and philosopher who lived in the period of 1856 to 1952. So that was over 150 years ago. And he was one of the first people who said that learning means something which an individual does when he studies. It is an active, personally conducted affair. People come to understand themselves and the world through their interaction with other people and things in the world. And the purpose of our educational system is to provide that environment that will facilitate these things. And that was long time ago, before all this approach, before technology and before all these strategies and so forth. So the essence of active learning has always been there. Now, active learning, what does it mean? Simply stated, active learning is simply, as one of the colleagues I think mentioned here and also in the latest section, it means that you are engaging the student in the learning process. So the student is not sitting on a chair passive and you're lecturing them, but you're involving them in their learning process. They are doing things. So you give them the knowledge, and then they actually have to apply that knowledge. Then they have to be able to reflect on what they have learned. And then they have to be able to transfer the learning to a different situation and a different context. That is what active learning is all about. So it's about really creating those meaningful learning activities that will help students achieve their learning outcomes and their learning goals. Now, active learning means students need to really do more than memorizing. At the core of it, active learning is teaching students how to learn and relearn. This is what active learning is all about. Sometimes we have been so much embraced in being able to teach our subject. I teach marketing, or I teach anatomy, or I teach histology, or I teach programming. My focus is mainly on teaching the skills related to the subject. But there is a whole range of important skills that students have to gain during their learning experience at the university. Critical thinking, communication, collaboration, problem solving. Who's going to be teaching this? We consider that it's implicitly done. It comes, with the flow. We give student group projects, and we assume that students know how to work on a group project and that everybody's going to be involved, they're going to know how to plan the project, how to distribute the tasks. And when we found out in reality, one student did the project and the others are his friends, they just put their name into it. I do a lot of accreditation reviews, and part of these reviews, what we do, we meet with employers of the graduates of the university. And I've met with employers in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in the UAE, in Romania. And one of the first questions that we ask these employers, we say, how do you evaluate the graduates of University X? And you know what is most of the time, what is the answer we have? Do you know what is the answer? That subject-wise, the students are very good. But when they come to the workplace or the internship placement, they are not professionally ready for it. They lack the soft skills. They are not capable of presenting something. They are shy, they are reserved. They don't want to talk out, they don't want to speak out. They cannot put an argument and defend the case. Now, if this is the case, then there's probably a problem in what we have been doing during the 4 years. If a student spends 4 years in universities doing projects and doing assignments and reaches to the point when he cannot do a 5 minutes presentation in front of his boss or his colleagues or peers, then it means there is a problem in our educational system. We assume that students pick up these skills as they are moving from one course to another. But we have an important role in building these skills in our students. If students don't have presentation skills, if students are not critical thinkers, if students can barely memorize things and put them, then it means that there is an issue with the way the teaching experience happened during the 4 years or 2 years or whatever they have studied. And this is why one of the very important things about active learning is to teach students how to learn. You know why it became very crucial? I was reading a few weeks ago, I was invited to talk on a panel, and it was about higher education in light of the fourth industrial revolution. And one of the reports I read saying that 65% of the students who are entering primary education today are going to be working by the time they graduate from universities in jobs that haven't yet been created. Do you know what this means? This means that the student that we are graduating today in computer science, in business, in nursing, in pharmacy, might probably in 15 times have to work in a job that hasn't been created. So how do we build the metacognitive skills of those particular students? It did happen. I am a graduate of computer science. When I did my undergraduate studies, I was taught programming language like COBOL and Fortran, and these are dead languages. If you go and talk to anybody about COBOL and Fortran and assembly, they're going to say, what are you talking about? These are completely dead programming languages. So our role is really to build up in students those skills that will allow them to become agile and to adapt to different situations. This is what actually our role is. Now, when we are implementing active learning, so basically when you are implementing active learning, you need to make sure that in your class, in your teaching, there are 3 things that are happening. One, and sometimes people say, active learning, and I'm going to stop doing lectures, I'm going to stop doing PowerPoint. No, it doesn't mean that. You're still going to be lecturing. One main key element of active learning is that there need to be a situation first where there is a transfer of new knowledge and information and ideas to the student. You might do that by a lecture. Just let me finish this question and I'll come back. It could be through a video, it could be through a broadcast you do for your student. The second element that needs to occur and happen is that the student has to have the opportunity to apply that knowledge in practice. So you have to do some activities that allows the student to put that knowledge into practice. If you are just asking them to memorize it, it's no good. You might show them an experience, you might engage them in an activity. The third and most important situation that has to happen is that your students have to have the opportunity to reflect on their learning. When we give students assessments and exams, we tend to do everything for them. We give them the feedback, we give them the answer, but we're not helping them. Let the student reflect on their own work. Let them look at actual actually where did they went right and where did they go wrong? And if they went wrong, what are the kind of things and steps they should consider so that they can improve their next assignment or their next exam or their next whatever. Reflection is a very important element of active learning. And this is why self-assessment has become a very crucial thing in many universities. And I know you're going to say, I'm going to let the student give them grades. No, you don't have to let the student give. I'll tell you about how to implement self-assessment in a bit. So these are the 3 events to have an active learning class. If you don't have these 3 events, or one of them is missing, then it means your class is not active learning. And actually there are checklists that you can find on the website that helps you to self-assess yourself on whether or not you have actually implemented an active learning class. Sir, you wanted to say something, I'm sorry?
Actually, you have paid great attention to the soft skills.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the soft skills are of special importance, but without the professional skills, without the other skills, it's of no value.
See, most of us, doctor, I didn't say that soft skills are important and the technical or the subject skills are not important. But the subject skill, by default, we do it. Because by default, we have to achieve the learning outcomes at the course and at the program level. So most of us as professors, we are very worried about the subject or the discipline skill. What we sometimes tend to think that students pick up on the way as they are taking one course are the soft skills. Because often when we don't have dedicated courses for soft skills, even when many universities did preparatory programs and all, they were not very successful.
Actually, I wonder how the employers pay this great importance, this importance to the soft skills without mentioning the professional skills or practical skills.
See, for many of them, they did not worry about the profession. Of course, there are always few exceptions. Okay. They found that the student, for instance, the computer science graduate, had good programming skills, good system analysis, but they found out that as a programmer, he wasn't ready to work in an enterprise, in an international firm, where basically he has meeting. When you go to the job place, it's not just about your subject. You're going to have to work in teams, you're going to have to put proposals, you're going to have to do presentations, you might have to meet clients, patients, whatever it is. So you need those soft skills. The technical skills are usually what we focus on. And that is why I haven't looked into them, because it's usually something we do. Every professor, at the end of the course, you do a course specification, your course report. And in your course report, you have to address to which extent have you achieved every course learning outcome. And if you haven't, you have to justify that. Now, so this is there. It's the soft skills that is being actually an issue. Even for universities that use graduate attributes or institutional learning outcomes, most of the time they don't assess them. PLOs, CLOs, they have to assess. It's mandatory.
We are also responsible for the soft skills.
Of course.
Such as interpersonal skills and communication skills. They are soft skills.
Yes, but in many cases, we don't put so much attention to it. And let us move a bit so that you see what we're talking about. So active learning, keep it in the back of your mind. These 3 situations has to happen. Knowledge transfer. Second thing, application. Third thing, reflection. Now, why are we so much worried about active learning? Because there is a lot of research that has demonstrated that active learning has the power of improving student retention, of allowing the students to apply all the levels, lower and higher order thinking skills. So when you engage students, and that doesn't mean only soft skills, that means also subject-related skills, that the more you engage students in activities, in applying the knowledge, the more you have the chance to have achieved all the levels, all the 6 levels of our thinking. And we'll talk about the Bloom's taxonomy in a bit very shortly. It also provides an opportunity for students to link the knowledge with actually a practical thing, with something. So I know about active learning strategies. I can come and tell you theoretically about. The next thing is for you to know how to apply it. Because if you know just the definition, it's no good to you. It also it basically helps the student to really practice important skills. When you do active learning, these active learning activities could be in class, outside of the class, individually, collaboratively. So when you want to improve collaboration skills, for instance, students collaboratively working, you need to make sure that you are preparing, that the students know how to collaborate. I so many times, When we look at course reports and course files and we authentify student work and so forth, we say, okay, جماعة الخير, you give group project. How do you select the students in the group? And most of the time the answer is that students pick their own group. Is it the case? Yes? They pick their own group. So obviously if I'm a student, I'm going to take my friends. And obviously in 90% of the case, the work is not equally distributed among the members of the groups. The question is, what as professors have we done to ensure that students know about how to collaborate on group projects? Have we been evaluating and giving the same grade for all the students despite of what they have been doing? Do you give them the same grade? How many of you give the same grade to all members of the group? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. So you give different grades. Those who give different grades, how do you grade? Yes? Okay, so you divide it. A lot of people will come and say, if I don't give the same group, it's more of a subjective thing, to be honest with you, because what happens is that you give everybody an individual grade, and then this dilutes the whole purpose of collaborative projects or group projects, because the idea is that you're giving a group project because you have a learning outcome that says that students have to be able to work collectively on something, right? That's why you're giving a group project. So you have to give value to the process through which the student came up to an end product. And that is why when you're promoting active learning, you think about, how am I going to evaluate group project? Maybe I should split my grade to two parts: the process of developing the project and the final product. The process looks at individual contribution and group contribution. So part of the grade is individual. Students maintain weekly logs or whatever about what they have done, or you ask them to do oral presentation or blah, 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 blah. And you also give a grade for the dynamics, because you want students to be able to come in a group, they know how to distribute the task, they have a project plan, they have conflicts, they resolve conflicts, they fight, they argue, and this is the value of the group project. You don't always let the student pick their own friends. Why? Because the idea of doing a group project, the idea behind it, is you prepare the student for the workplace. When your student is going to graduate tomorrow and he's going to work, he's not going to pick the people with whom he wants to work. His boss is going to put him in teams, and probably he might have to work with somebody he hates or she hates. So it is not always good practice to let students pick their own group project and do their own thing. But when you're implementing active learning, you might need to see, okay, Anna, I want to improve the process of group project. Maybe there are some activities I can be doing in my class. I can be mentoring, I can be monitoring and providing feedback to see how well the dynamics in a group are actually working. So you don't think about active learning after you thought about your assessment and you think of it right at the beginning when you're designing your particular project. So active learning has this power of improving collaborative learning, presentation, pair work, self-esteem, community building, and so forth.